Before we begin today's story, take a moment to subscribe if you enjoy emotionally driven stories that linger long after the video ends. These aren't loud or rushed. They quietly settle into your heart. And if you stay until the end, you might find yourself thinking about this one longer than you expect. They say a quiet house can hide the loudest truths. That night, as rain tapped against the roof like a warning, I opened a door I was never meant to open. What I saw didn't just change my job. It shattered everything I thought I knew about kindness, loyalty, and love. My name is Elena. I was 38, divorced, and desperate for work. The mansion on Willow Heights became my second home. Or maybe just the place where I hid from everything I'd lost. The house looked like perfection. White marble floors, gold-framed family portraits, the scent of roses lingering in every hallway. But perfection has a way of feeling cold, like it's covering something too fragile to touch. Mr. and Mrs. Carver owned the estate. He was a businessman, sharp, controlled, the kind of man who smiled with his mouth but never his eyes. She was soft-spoken and graceful, carrying the quiet sadness of someone who had once loved too deeply. They had a son, Noah, 21, a college student who only came home on weekends. At first, I believed they were the perfect family. I polished their silver, arranged their flowers, listened to their laughter echo through the walls. But over time, I began to notice the silence between their words. The way Mrs. Carver's hands trembled when her husband entered the room. The way Noah avoided eye contact at dinner. The way certain doors in the house always remained locked. Still, I told myself it wasn't my place to question anything. A housekeeper's duty ends at the edge of the truth. Until that Thursday night. The storm came without warning. Thunder cracked through the sky like something was chasing it. The Carvers had gone to an event, leaving me alone to finish the laundry and lock up. I was humming softly when I heard it. A faint sound, almost like someone crying. I paused, listening. It came again, not loud, but unmistakable. A broken whisper drifting through the walls. Please don't hide it again. My heart pounded. The sound was coming from the basement. The one place I was never allowed to enter. I stood at the top of the stairs for what felt like minutes. Every instinct told me to walk away. But something stronger, maybe curiosity, maybe compassion, pulled me downward. The air grew colder with each step. The smell of damp earth and old secrets wrapped around me. And then I saw it. A locked trunk, half covered with a blanket, shaking slightly, as if something inside it was alive. I froze. And that's when I realized, whatever this family was hiding, it wasn't meant to stay buried forever. I stood there, staring at the trunk. The storm above rumbled again, as if urging me to leave. But my hands moved before my fear could stop them. The blanket slipped to the floor. And I realized, the trunk wasn't shaking. I was. There was no monster inside. No chained secret clawing to escape. Instead, leaning against the wall behind it, was something far more haunting. A portrait. Massive. Beautiful. Painfully detailed. It was Mrs. Carver. But younger. Her eyes were brighter in the painting. Her smile softer. She looked hopeful. And across her face, in thick, violent strokes of black paint, someone had written one word. Forgive. My breath caught in my throat. There were more. Stacked against the wall. Canvas after canvas of Mrs. Carver at different ages. Smiling. Crying. Pregnant. Hollow-eyed. Each one defaced with the same word. Forgive. The basement didn't feel cold anymore. It felt heavy, like grief had been living there for years. I didn't touch anything else. I couldn't. I covered the trunk again, turned off the light, and climbed the stairs, but the image followed me. The next morning, the house was painfully normal. Mrs. Carver sat at the breakfast table sipping tea. Mr. Carver read the newspaper. Noah scrolled through his phone. No one mentioned the storm. No one mentioned the basement. But when Mrs. Carver looked at me, there was something in her eyes. Not suspicion. Recognition. As if she knew something had shifted. Days passed. I tried to convince myself I had imagined it. That exhaustion had twisted shadows into meaning. Until Noah cornered me in the kitchen one evening. You went to the basement, didn't you? His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. I froze. I heard something. I whispered. I didn't mean to pry. He studied me for a long moment, then sighed. You weren't supposed to see that, he said quietly. But maybe it's time someone did. My heart began to pound again. Because whatever that word meant, whatever those paintings were trying to say, it wasn't just art. It was a confession. And I was about to learn what the Carvers had buried far deeper than a locked trunk. Noah didn't speak right away. He just walked toward the basement door, paused, then looked back at me. Come with me, he said softly. This time, the lights were already on. The basement didn't feel forbidden anymore. It felt exposed. He pulled one of the canvases forward. His mother. Younger, glowing, one hand resting gently on her stomach. She painted these, he said. All of them. I blinked. But the word. She doesn't remember painting that part. The air felt thinner. Noah ran a hand through his hair, like he'd carried this story alone for too long. Years ago there was an accident, he continued. A car crash. It wasn't fatal. At least, not for her. I felt my chest tighten. She was pregnant, he said quietly. I was 16. I didn't even know at first. Dad didn't tell anyone. Not even the extended family. The room seemed to tilt. She lost the baby that night. The word hung between us. Lost. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just devastating. She blamed herself. Noah whispered. The doctors said it wasn't her fault. But guilt doesn't listen to doctors. I looked at the painting again. The softness in Mrs. Carver's eyes. The life that might have been. She started art therapy, Noah said. At first it helped. She painted the baby's room. Tiny shoes. Sunlight through a window. He swallowed. Then the word started appearing. Forgive. She would paint it over her own face, he said. Like she couldn't stand looking at herself. And your father? I asked gently. Noah gave a humorless smile. He thought hiding it would fix it. He locked the paintings away. Told her she needed to move on. Told everyone she had. The silence in that house suddenly made sense. It wasn't coldness. It was containment. She doesn't remember destroying the paintings, Noah continued. Sometimes she doesn't even remember being pregnant. Trauma does that. It erases things. I thought of the way Mrs. Carver sometimes stared out the window. The way her hands trembled. She asks me sometimes, he said, voice breaking slightly. Do you ever feel like something's missing? And suddenly, the basement didn't feel like a secret anymore. It felt like a grave no one had been allowed to visit. Noah looked at me then, not as the housekeeper, but as someone who had seen the truth. She needs to open that trunk, he said. But Dad won't let her. Upstairs, the door closed. Footsteps. Someone had come home. And for the first time since I started working there, I realized. The storm that night hadn't been outside. It had been living inside this house for years. That evening, the house felt different. Not tense. Not silent. Just waiting. I found Mrs. Carver standing near the basement door. Her hand rested lightly against the frame, like she was listening to something only she could hear. I keep dreaming about a room downstairs, she said without looking at me. A room I'm not supposed to enter. My heart tightened. You don't have to go alone, I told her. She turned to me then. And for the first time, her sadness wasn't hidden behind politeness. It was honest. We walked down together. Noah was already there. The trunk sat in the center of the room now, uncovered. No more blankets. No more pretending. Mrs. Carver stopped in front of it. Her fingers trembled as they hovered over the lock. I'm afraid, she whispered. Noah stepped closer. So am I. And slowly she opened it. Inside were tiny folded baby clothes. A soft stuffed bear. Hospital bracelets. And a sealed envelope. Her breath broke as she picked it up. The letter was addressed in her own handwriting. To my little one. She sank onto the floor as she read. The words were shaky. Apologetic. Loving. A mother speaking to a child she never got to hold. Tears slid silently down her face. I thought if I buried it, she whispered, it would stop hurting. Footsteps echoed on the stairs. Mr. Carver. He froze when he saw the open trunk. For a moment, I thought he would be angry. Instead, something in his expression collapsed. You didn't lose her alone, he said quietly. Mrs. Carver looked up at him, confused, wounded. I was there too, he continued. And I didn't know how to grieve. So I tried to erase it. His voice shook on the last word. Erase. He stepped forward, slowly, like approaching something fragile. I thought protecting you meant pretending it didn't happen. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was shared. Noah reached for his mother's hand. Mr. Carver reached for the other. And for the first time, they weren't standing apart in their pain. They were standing together. Upstairs, the house no longer felt cold. It felt lived in, breathing. In the weeks that followed, the paintings came upstairs. Not all at once. Just one at a time. The word forgive was no longer covered in shame. It became a reminder. And something else changed too. Watching them face their grief forced me to face my own. I had lost someone too. Not to death, but to distance. My daughter, Grace. When my marriage fell apart, she chose to live with her father. I told myself she was better off. That silence was easier. But silence is just another locked basement. One night, sitting in my small apartment after work, I picked up my phone. My hands shook the same way Mrs. Carver's had. And I called her. We talked for hours. We cried. We apologized. We didn't fix everything in one night. But we opened the door. And sometimes that's enough. I was hired to clean a perfect house. But what I really witnessed was a family learning how to forgive themselves. And maybe that's the quiet truth about secrets. They don't disappear when we hide them. They wait. Until we're brave enough to open the trunk.